Love is the most important thing in the world, but baseball is pretty good too. This is a quote from the late Yogi Berra, who was a manager as well as a catcher for the New York Yankees. This quote really exemplifies and puts into perspective the passion that I have for baseball. If there was a dream job that I could have or anything that I wanted to do the rest of my life, it would be to be a Major League Baseball manager. Before I get started, the two sources that I use are sportsdirect.com as well as 670thescore.radio.com. First off, we're going to talk a little bit about what a Major League manager does. So in professional baseball, there are many types of coaches. There are a first base coach, a third base coach, a bench coach, a pitching coach, a catching coach, and so on and so forth. And the manager of the team is pretty much over all of those coaches. So, for example, in the off season, a manager would be in charge of keeping all the other coaches in the know about what's going on at practice that day, as well as scheduling team practice that day and what drills are going on at practice, what everybody's doing, who's doing what, and just running the team every day. But, for example, on game day or like in the season, a manager is going to be in charge of if it's an away game, when the team plane leaves, when you're supposed to show up for the team plane. As far as when game time comes, they're going to be in charge of making the lineups, deciding who's the starting 9 players on the field that day, who he's thinking about pitching that day, who he is thinking about coming in relief for that day, and just pretty much who all is on the field. And another thing, as far as not only do they have to get their players trained and be over all the practices as well as who's playing and who's not, they also have to look at the team atmosphere and the pretty much the locker room. It's kind of overlooked because these are professional athletes, these are adults, but there are still lots of egos and attitudes that clash even when you're that age. So a manager is in charge of keeping everybody level-headed and making sure everybody plays together, because that's in the best interest of the team, and they have to make everybody realize that even though you're making millions of dollars, even though you're one of the select few greatest baseball players in the world, and especially in the United States, you're not better than anybody on your team, and everybody has to gel and work together in order to accomplish the ultimate goal, which would be a World Series. So next we're going to talk about kind of what it takes to be a Major League manager. There's no set guideline of what it takes to be a manager. For example, like a high school coach or even a college coach has to have a bachelor's degree and things of that nature. But for an MLB manager, really it depends on who you know as well as your baseball IQ. There are many managers in the game today that went to college for 2 or 3 years and didn't graduate, so they don't have a degree. Then they played in the pros, and then as soon as they got done playing in their professional career, they got hired as a Major League manager. So there's no education or certain protocol that you have to have, but you do have to have a knowledge of the game. Your baseball IQ has to be high. You have to be smart, and really it kind of depends on your resume. You know, if you have coached at the college level before or maybe the high school level and you've never been really good, you've always had negative things said about you, or you had players that didn't like you, or you didn't have a winning record, you didn't know how to win, there was nothing really that set you apart from all the other coaches in the world that would like to be in your position, then you're probably not going to get the job. But there's just really nothing set in stone that you have to have so on or so and so and whatever to be a manager. It's just who you know, your knowledge of the game, and things like that. So next we're going to talk a little bit about, or finally we're going to talk a little bit about the salary of an MLB manager. So on average, a manager makes about $1.3 million a year, but really this depends on kind of like what we just talked about. It really depends on your resume, and it really depends on how good you are and just how you are as a coach. For example, I think Mike Scioscia of the Los Angeles Angels, Joe Maddon of the Cubs, and Bruce Bochy of the Giants, they are all, within this past decade, they have won World Series. Some of them were multiple World Series, but they're also world-renowned coaches. They've always had a winning record. Their players have lots of good things to say about them. They make about $6 million a year. Those are the highest-paid coaches in the league. But your bottom end coaches, like I said, are going to make on average about $1 million a year, and really it just depends. Let's say you just came from somewhere for that you were at for 5 to 10 years, and you had a losing record every season. Your players didn't have very many good things to say about you. Then you're probably not going to get paid. You're just going to get paid the bare minimum. But if you just came somewhere and you were there for 5 to 10 years and you won multiple World Series, or you had a winning season every season, you were a player coach, everybody liked you, there was lots of good things said about you, then you might get paid on the higher end. And because that's what's going to set you apart from everybody else that's competing for your job. But in my opinion, baseball is the greatest sport on earth, and I've been around it since I was little. And if you were to tell me that I could be around baseball the rest of my life at the highest level and get to coach, that would be exactly what I wanted to do. And on top of that, why wouldn't you want to do something that you love and be making millions of dollars off of it?